Hi Alan, welcome back to Prop Store. Perhaps you could tell everyone who you are, what you do and how you got involved with the Harryhausen Foundation.
My name is Alan Friswell. I'm the restorer for the Ray Diana Harryhausen Foundation. My job primarily is to restore and repair those of Ray's models that are falling into deterioration because of the materials they're made from happens inevitably over a period of time. Also to preserve those models to ensure that they will last as long as possible and to keep them fit for exhibitions and future gallery work.
And how did you come to work with Ray?
Well, Ray had a website and he didn't post on it very much. Other people did, but he put posts on now and again. And this was about 3 or 4 weeks before Christmas 2009. And a post came on saying that the galleries and exhibits were asking for Ray's models, principally Talos, Gwangi and Kali, for exhibit, but they couldn't be moved because they were so badly damaged and this was impossible to even take them out of their box. So they said in 2010 they wanted to start a program of restoration. And they weren't asking for anybody, it wasn't, but at these moments you either jump in or you don't. So I sent an email, I said I know how to do this, I've done it all my life and I do it professionally and I know how to fix them. Honestly thinking that I was going to get a reply saying thank you but we got it covered and whatever. And I got a reply 10 minutes later and said, Ray, I couldn't believe it. They said, Ray knows who you are. Ray's heard of your work and would you like to come down to the BAFTA building in early New Year to talk about it? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I got an answer at all, let alone that one. So I said, of course I'll come down and talk about it. And early that year, early in 2010, I went down to speak to one of Ray's people and we had a nice chat about it. And it all went quiet for a while because it was going to be Ray's 90th that year. And we had birthday celebrations and so it waited until after that was over and I got an invite to Ray's house. And I took a big bag full of models down with me and I had a chat with Ray for about 2.5 hours, longer than that in fact. And he liked the stuff I had and he said, we'll give you a sample. And it was a tiny boy from Valley of Gwangi, a tiny boy called Lopi that was taken off the back of a horse by a pterodactyl. And he was in quite a bad way, his hat brim had fallen away and his clothes were. So I took him back and I repaired him and I brought him back and Ray said, that's good. He said, we like that. And we'll give you something slightly more complicated. And I thought that's what he meant, slightly more complicated. And he brought out the Allosaurus from 1 million years BC, which was about 6 times the size, and it was in pieces. It was in bits. I just looked at it, and just for a minute there was an absolute terror and then I sort of pulled myself together because I thought I'd never have offered myself unless I knew what I could do. So I took it back and fixed it, and it went okay, and Ray was very happy with it. He said, do you want to be our restorer? Do you want to do it properly? So again, yes, silly question. So I said, yes, of course. And it went from there. The next one was a figurehead from Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which again, and then there was a Brontosaurus in 1 million years BC, and swords for the skeletons from Jason, and the baboon from Eye of the Tiger, the smaller baboon. And it just continued from there. And sadly, when Ray passed in 2013, Vanessa and the foundation said, well, I continue because Ray was happy with, so of course I was delighted to do that. And that's how it's gone ever since.
Perhaps you can tell us about some of the, without giving away any trade secrets, some of the techniques that you use to restore these models.
It's unusual really because I think part of the reason I got the position with Ray because it was using new materials. The problem with latex is because if it's foam latex or liquid latex, it comes from a rubber tree. It all comes from that. You can add chemicals to it, bits, whatever. But ultimately it's biodegradable. So at some point it's going to go and there's nothing you do about it. So years before, to repair my own models, I'd built models using the same materials. I'd kind of developed this a polymer acrylic, and what it generally is basically, if you want the technical side of this, in rubber materials you've got polymer molecules that are surrounded by a chemical element, and over the years the chemical element dissipates and breaks down. The polymer molecules pull together, usually it becomes dry and brittle, it turns to powder. Sometimes it drifts apart and becomes liquid and sticky. I'm sure you're very familiar with in prop store. And you can't do anything about it if you're using rubber to repair that because it's the same stuff. So I thought if I can replace this material around the polymer molecules with something else, it would stabilise it. So I used an acrylic compound which is synthetic. It's not biodegradable, it's plastic basically, but it's flexible. So putting that around the polymer molecules held them in permanent suspension. And you can mix different variations of this to make it, you can sculpt with it, you can paint on with like liquid, you can do all sorts. And I'd repaired my own models and it worked. So when I approached Ray, I said, I've got this material, I know it works, and Ray said, we'll test it, and Ray was happy because he knew it worked. And that essentially is the material that we're going with up until now because Ray approved of it. And with all of these things, I was grateful to have the opportunity to ask Ray every detail about how he wanted these things fixed, to what degree he wanted them fixed, any other materials that he wanted to be. And so what we're doing now is upholding that. We've still got Ray looking over our shoulder because we're not deviating from that at all. We're using exactly the same processes, the same materials that Ray approved. And so that's why we're happy to be doing what we're doing.
So what are the challenges that face you when you sit down with a model for the first time?
It depends on the model itself. Some models have got a greater degree of deterioration than others. The Hydra from Jason from 1963 you can still animate it. It's still so flexible. So that was treated with a coating that wasn't. There were some areas the horns and the beaks had to be replaced and tiny bits of sculpture and here and there, but generally it was just treated with a protective coating that you can still flexible, but it stops the ozone from the atmosphere and the oxygen and heat and everything else getting into it. So that was one area where it was particularly difficult. The worst one was actually not technically speaking a model at all. It was the crab from Mysterious Island, which wasn't a model, it was a real crab shell. So because Ray was originally going to sculpt it as a complete stop motion model, but he reasoned that if he could find a crab shell that was as big as he wanted, then why not use a real crab shell? You can't get better than nature, and it would save so much time. So he got a real crab from Harrods and took it to the Natural History Museum, where the fish department, the fish section, took the crab apart for him, showing him where the joints were. And Ray built the armature to fit inside the crab, which didn't help me much because in later years when it was all broken apart around the joints, I had to repair. There's a big hole in one of the claws, and to repair a sculpture is one thing because what you're doing is you're copying the characteristics of the sculpture with a texture bead, scaly skin or whatever it is, to try and replicate that. But how do you replicate nature? Because it's organically real, it's not sculpted. So that was a very, very tricky thing to have to do. I think I managed it okay, I think I got through it. But that was probably the biggest challenge of all of Ray's models, I think.
Obviously we're at Prop Store and you can see these models again. We're thrilled and privileged to be offering these at auction later this year. Just wondered if you had any personal stories or thoughts about the collection that we're going to be offering.
They're all basically childhood memories. There are two levels to these. There's the thing I experienced as a kid, and then the next thing I experienced as actually having been in the room with these models as an adult, which I didn't think I'd ever do. That's a massive privilege to be in the same room with these models, with a collection, let alone being allowed to restore them. All of these models, Taylor's as a kid, I remember seeing that on TV when I was 10 for the first time.
That first moment when he looks around, and it's amazing.
I still have an arm, a plasticine arm that I built, and I've got it. I wrapped it up in tissue paper, and I tried to build that when I was 10, and I've still got that. I've still got that arm. I never threw it away. I've still got it. And Carly, I remember seeing a clip of that on TV before I saw the film. Actually, there's a clip on TV, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so fantastic, and everybody has the same remembrance of that. It's one of the best stop motion sequences ever put on film. The Hydra, the same thing. All of these. Valley of Guanji is one of my favourites, and.
Do you like Pinky?
I know it's a wonderful, because you probably know the story, you may or may not know the story. Ray was going to use a real elephant for some of it, and then they delivered the elephant on the set, and the elephant was only about 6 foot high at the shoulder, and Ray nearly died. He said, well, how are we going to make this look big? So reluctantly, we decided to animate the whole thing, which probably is better, because, you know, to cut it from a real elephant to a stop motion elephant, why would you do that anyway? And Ray always had in mind that it was going to look better, you know, to do all those scenes with stop motion. And that's one of my favourites. They're all my favourites in their own way, I think. I mean, Eye of the Tiger was one of the first films I actually got to see in the cinema. And I'd read the paperback book before I saw the film. And I saw a trailer for the film, and it was like the book was coming to life because I knew what the film was about. To see it on the screen was fantastic. So all of it, I think for all of us really, any mention of these models, just seeing them brings back so many memories. And I think that's part of Ray's magic really, that it creates all those childhood things that we retain as adults.
Yeah, no, I agree. The whole magic of Ray's work is nostalgia first and foremost, and that never goes away.
I think it's something that many people. I mean, he's not the only one. There's Jerry Anderson and there's Jim Henson and there's Disney and these magical people who do things that I think they allow us to become adults but still remain kids. There's not too many things in life that allow that. So I think we should be. It's a wonderful thing that we can still remain children and get away with it because nobody criticises us when we say we love Thunderbirds or we love Jason the Argonauts. So we're fantastic. So nobody tells you to grow up when you say you like those things. So
that's a good point.
It's one of those wonderful things that Ray gave to us.